Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall, and we're back again, baby. I know we didn't really go anywhere, but we're back.
No, we're back, and it's I can feel it creeping in, Niall. I can feel the fall vibes creeping in. It's always there with me on some level, but I can finally feel it. And this is despite the weird hot temperatures we've been having recently. And because I've been feeling it, Niall, when I can't sleep, one of the things that I do is I watch a movie.
Hey, that's tried, battle tested method of spending time.
Yeah. So I've been watching a lot of horror, and I am just like, I'm locked in, is what I'm saying. I'm locked in for these next couple months as we get closer to Halloween season, and it's been a lot of fun. So I just wanted to say I watched Lake Mungo.
I've heard good things about that one. I've never seen it.
It was very good.
It's like a found footage, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's got a mix of found footage in it, but it's sort of like a mockumentary also. And then like there's also the occasional like cinematic scene that's like got voiceover over it. So it's pretty unique. And it's also not like, it kind of gets like thrown around as like, this is the scariest.
Yeah,
shit
people
of
talk
all
about it
time.
as like surprisingly scary.
It's got, I don't want to like say too much because I think you should watch it, but it's not quite right, I think, advertising that. So just throwing that out there for you, for those of you listening who like horror, check out Lake Mungo. It's not, I think if you're expecting like a Blair Witch type horror movie or whatever, you're not going to get that. But if you go in just kind of like accepting that like the movie is kind of more about this family dealing with death, then it's more interesting. So that's what I've been up to. What have you gotten into this spooky season at all? Like it's rapidly approaching, and I don't want to like, call you out, but like I haven't gotten any reports on my desk like here's the spooky shit I'm up to.
Well, let's take a quick look through my most recent. So I have seen a couple horror movies lately. I have been trying to catch up on some of the 2024 ones. Like I went to go see Cuckoo pretty recently.
Oh, was that good?
I really liked it.
Okay,
like
cool.
It's not perfect, but it if you go in expecting just a good horror movie, it will do that. Yeah. And I think Dan Stevens and Hunter Schafer were fantastic in it, so I'm all for it. I also recently rewatched. I've been obsessed with like wanting to rewatch all of the Final Destination movies.
Okay.
So I rewatched Final Destination 2 a couple days ago with Jules.
Nice.
And where I'm probably going to continue that. So I've been big on franchise stuff lately.
Sure.
Like the idea of trying to permutate a franchise, because like. I was rewatching. So recently, I've rewatched Texas Chainsaw 2, Exorcist 3, and Final Destination 2, and all of those things take very different avenues to try to sequelize a for lack of a better term for all of them, classic. And I find that really interesting. So like permutation and franchise stuff in horror is something that I find very interesting and something I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of my spooky content, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny cuz like we were just talking about the original author of The Exorcist and their connections to the CIA and how they were involved with like psychological warfare and stuff. And that's all very appropriate for what we're about to get into here. But it's I guess look, I'm glad you're getting into the movies as well, but I would also say, just a suggestion, like movies aren't the be all end all. You could start doing other things that embody the spirit of these coming months, like having a candied apple, perhaps. You could do one of those.
Yeah.
You could.
So are candied apples different than caramel apples?
Yes.
Okay. So is
candied
one
apples
hard and one is soft caramel?
No, I think the candied apple is also kind of soft, if I remember. I can't remember the last time I actually had a candied apple, but like, because I'm a caramel apple guy.
Yeah.
But they have like a red goo over them, right?
Yeah,
like,
but it's to me that always was just like a hard caramel, like a hard cracked caramel. But I'm not certain I've ever had an actual candied apple. I think I just grew up thinking that caramel apples were the same thing and liking caramel apples.
Yeah,
because we would go to that. You'll know this. Here's your ultra local fucking reference for the week. Going to the Edinburgh Outlet Center and Outlet Mall and getting Rocky Mountain Fudge Factory.
Oh
apples.
My God. I forgot about the Rocky Mountain Fudge Factory. Holy shit. Yeah, that's, that's the kind of shit you got to do to get those numbers up as we approach Halloween. I definitely think movies are a great place to start, but I'm just saying you could do some other stuff. Bobbing for apples. There's a lot of apple-themed activities, it turns out.
I did already purchase some Halloween-esque decorations this season, including a pillow and also a statue that I'm about to show you, because I don't think you've seen this yet.
No, I don't think so. Okay, he's turned around. He's pulling something off his shelf. He's coming back. Let's see what this is.
This is like a princess skeleton sitting on a toilet texting.
What the fuck?
And I thought it was funny. So
where did you get that?
At one of the, like, I think it was Michael's maybe. But yeah,
wow.
I then after this, turns out other companies are also making different like universal monsters that are texting on the toilet.
Oh, perfect.
But this, so I might have to see if I have to start a collection of Halloween-y themed toilet texting creatures.
I love it. And the only thing that I would say though is like, you didn't mention any of this in your report to me.
That's true. Yeah.
So I had no idea that you were getting this far into the Halloween spirit this early. So that's part
of the strategy, because I'm gonna fucking win Halloween this year, everybody.
That's fair. You
don't even know the levels of shit I'm on already. Okay. It's secret.
You're gonna put one big ass report on my desk that collects the past 3 months of all the skeletons and bats and things that you've collected, and the apples you've eaten that have a candy coating. And it's going to blow my mind. I can already feel it. And all that being said though, Niall, we do have an email to kick this episode off. Before we get into the CIA bullshit, we have an email which was titled Sovereign Citizens and a Big Question. And this is from Travis. And it says, "Hey guys, I've written into you once or twice before, and an experience with a customer at the dispensary I work at, who I think was a sovereign citizen or something, parenthetical, he insisted there was an anonymous button we could press to keep the information on his ID from being accessible to the state, which isn't how anything works. Got me wondering if there is enough meat on the conspiracy theories underlying the sovereign citizen movement to cover in an episode. The whole thing is dumb enough. I'm sure you'd have plenty of fodder for jokes. I love how every one of them eventually ends up in court. It's just the court has no jurisdiction over them and then gets sent to jail anyway. They also included a big question, which maybe I'll just save to the end of the episode.
Cool. I have looked into. I haven't found a lot of like actual conspiracy. I mean, I guess is a misunderstanding of the law a conspiracy? Because like I think that kind of comes down on the sovereign citizen. Like the thing that I have found that is kind of linked, that is this kind of conspiracy, which is the gold fringe flag theory.
Oh, I feel like we've talked about this off the show before.
Yeah.
Remind me, what is that?
So it's basically like something about how if a flag has golden fringe around it, that means that like it's like a state of war or something. It's been a long time since I've read stuff about this. But like it's effectively like when flags have the gold fringe around them, the government is like basically doing martial law kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean like, is there a conspiracy theory that you can get to from the sovereign citizen thing? Maybe I think that the sovereign citizen thing is just like a flavor of guy who's much more likely to believe in some conspiracy style things, like the gold fringed flag, meaning that like we're secretly under martial law or whatever. That I think is a flavor of guy, but the thing is like you could also just like if you were to look into that, you'd also just like find like a very particular type of like outspoken libertarian, like, which I just revisited the video of, oh fuck, I'm not even going to remember his name, but it was like a libertarian, like, it was like a meeting where it was like a bunch of libertarians came together and like, God, I don't remember what this was actually for, but I remember the one guy going like, people are like asking a panel of libertarian representatives, like, do you think that like people need to have a driver's license? And like one of the guys goes like, what's next? They're going to ask us to have a license to toast in our own toaster. And then one of the guys, again, I can't remember any fucking names, but one of the guys goes, oh, well, I'd like to see some level of competency represented. And as soon as those words are out of his mouth, the entire like group is just fucking booing the guy.
Yeah. It's like you get stuff like that about like any level of qualification for a governmental thing in that kind of circle gets met like fucking low tier heel work in wrestling. Like it's like going out and making fun of the local sports team. Everyone just fucking loses their mind for you.
I also remember it was at the Libertarian presidential debate a couple years ago. That's what that was from. So those were the representatives for the Libertarian Party. So that's kind of the thing that I picture in my brain with the sovereign citizen thing. And I don't know, like, I kind of want to follow this thread of the anonymous button. Mm-hmm. I want to know where that came from, because like there's nothing in like life or reality to suggest that such a thing exists, at least the way I've been experiencing it. So curious what this person experienced that led them to believe that.
There's a dispensary approximately 3 minutes from my house. I'll walk over there and see if they know anything about the anonymous button.
Anonymous button. Yeah, I'd like to purchase my legal weed anonymously. Yeah, beautiful.
I don't want this. I don't want the United States. Only have me in your corporate system, not the government system.
Yes, please,
because that's better.
I can't have the government knowing that I've gotten a pretty good stash of white Yoda.
Yeah.
So
the government can't know that I bought a pack of fucking edibles. Like,
I think,
okay, all right.
I think white Yoda might be my go-to like weed reference, because it's the only strain name that I remember.
It's pretty good. I like to just try to make up a new variant of Kush. Like, sure. You know how like OG Kush, you just like you just fucking can make
Mace,
it like,
Windu Kush, Mace Windu
I got
Kush.
Fucking heavy metal Kush,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the email, Travis. And I think, Travis, what I might do with your big question here is I think I might just make it the end of this episode, because as we get through this one, I think we're going to need something a little more lighthearted and fun at the very end to joke around about. So Yeah, let's get into this now if you're ready. If you'll
Speaking
allow
of horrors, let's get into the episode.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is I wanted to quickly clarify something from the first episode. We talked about these sort of factors that led to the CIA believing that a mind-controlled drug existed at all. Like, what was it that propelled them into thinking that, like, this was possible? And I very badly tried to recall some of that information from the book because I referenced a specific incident that occurred that had the CIA believing that a mind-controlled drug existed and the communists had it. So what this was February of 1949. The Roman Catholic prelate of Hungary confessed to a bunch of stuff on a show trial. So those are the details that I kind of got wrong. So Roman Catholic prelate, and specifically, he claimed that he'd been plotting to, quote, overthrow the government, direct black market currency schemes, and sought to steal the royal crown as part of a plot to reestablish the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And he admitted all this. He admitted all this at this talk, and I guess the reports were that he was behaving very erratically and seemed to just not himself, was very off. And this is what led the CIA to conclude that this was evidence that the communists were able to control his mind with a drug, the Soviets specifically. But the truth of the matter is, like, that hadn't happened. Believe it or not, the Soviets did not drug this guy, but this guy had been subjected to typical coercive techniques involving, like, you know, beating his ass basically, and, like, I mean, another form of torture, really.
Yeah.
And so he was just, like, berated to the point of just being willing to admit to all these things he did not do. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah. Just wanted to, because I think thoroughly botched it in the last episode. So just wanted to clear it up.
Okay.
So with all that out of the way, previously we had discussed the projects that led up to the creation of the infamous MK Ultra program, right? So, lots of talk about Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke, Camp Dietrich, and, you know, biological warfare and all this crazy shit and Project Paperclip, can't forget that.
Yep.
All these different things that culminated in what would eventually become MK Ultra. So with OSS, the predecessor to the CIA, the OSS, the old boy OSS guy, Alan Dulles, which is a name that there's a couple names like this, but as we like get more into weird CIA shit, because there's a ton of it, Alan Dulles is going to be a very important name. He was what's up?
Is the Air Force Base named after him, or is it just like a location that they shares a name with?
I imagine it's named after him. Yeah.
Okay. I would assume because I don't think I was basically what I was trying to remember was Dulles Air Force Base in a town called Dulles, and I don't think it was. So
okay, yeah. So I would imagine it's named after him, although I don't know that for sure. But that would make sense. So Dulles is at the moment deputy director of Central Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And he has 3 CIA officers chosen to oversee Project Bluebird. That is, these are 3 names: Frank Wisner, Richard Helms, and James Jesus Angleton.
So where do The Rock and Kevin Hart come into this? Because I heard you said this was Central Intelligence.
Yes. Is that
they're in a movie called Central Intelligence together, where The Rock was like the loser in high school, and Kevin Hart was the cool guy. But now The Rock is older, and it's like a CIA agent, and Kevin Hart then ends up going on a caper with him.
Forgot about that movie completely. It was just out of my brain. But yes, I did look this up, and The Rock does play James Jesus Angleton.
Okay, because this is a movie that my extended family, I watched rented with my extended family around Christmas, because that's the kind of movie that you watch when you're in a Midwest extended family Christmas. You know?
Yeah, that's totally fair. I feel like I caught the tail end of that movie once and was like this because it like ends with like a dance party.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
where the Rock strips naked.
Yeah.
It used to play before wrestling a lot when
That's what
before
it was.
it switched networks. So
Yeah,
I saw the ending to that movie another probably 8 times.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, Frank Wisner, Richard Helms, and James Jesus Angleton. Now, I mostly want to bring up these names because they are going to be super important in the future episodes. Like I want to do an entire James Jesus Angleton episode because he's fucking ridiculous. So just to give you an idea,
Okay.
I guess James Jesus Angleton had like a bunch of nicknames. He's like one of the key, he is, if not the key person, one of the most key people in like basically fucking up the CIA from the inside out with paranoia about communist infiltration.
Okay.
And he himself was kind of like a conspiracy theorist. And he was just a super high up guy at the CIA. And he had all these names, the Orchid Keeper, the Spook Poet, all this weird shit. It's super weird. And he
Dr.
apparently...
Octagon, a kylologist, you know?
Yeah, exactly. What I found, this will lock into your mind what kind of guy this was.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he apparently inspired the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files.
Oh, okay. So he's the guy that just a bunch of people aren't fully sure why he's in the room, but everyone kind of defers to him in a weird way.
I can't go into the weeds on this because I have on the side like been reading about this guy, but he was like, it was like detrimental to your career to disagree with his like communist plots, conspiracies. It's right. Fucking crazy stuff. But these are the kinds of guys that are working at the CIA at this time.
I love how like any governmental organization, if you do any bit of research into their history, you find out how much of just a bunch of chuckle fucks every single thing is. Like,
yeah,
no organization. I don't believe there's a competent organization out there.
I also am kind of reaching that point in my life where I'm like, what's the drug church line? Anything that's bigger than a band is suspect and can't be relied on.
Yeah,
I think it's just you read about this shit and you're like, how the fuck how is this allowed to happen?
You realize the extents of the propaganda. Like, these are the things that make me realize how effective propaganda is in terms of like maintaining a status quo.
Yeah.
Because like the thing that everyone thinks of for these government organizations is how they're presented in TV and movies and not how they actually function. Because how they actually function is not nearly as cool
it's
or
batshit
or chill
it's
as
bizarre.
Anything. Yeah.
And like, you know, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but like there were people at the CIA who were like genuinely into the occult. We can't go too deep here, but like I think it is important to understand what absolute freaks were working at the CIA and the predecessor, the OSS. So like a lot of these guys, in fact, a majority of them were Ivy League grads. There's another podcast that I listened to that had a lot of information on all this stuff that I'm just going to give a shout out, kind of evergreen shout out, because it's very good, called Ghost Stories for the End of the World. Mm-hmm. And that show like very accurately pins them as the waspiest wasps around. These fucking guys, like this like upbringing and status would be kind of brought to these intelligence organizations. And anecdotally, the podcast even claims that some of these folks would refer to the OSS, even before the CIA was a thing, they would refer to the OSS as quote unquote, oh so sociable, because they're like going around this Georgetown circuit, you know, getting drinks with other socialites. These are, you know, snooty upper crust Yale and Harvard people with connections through social clubs, Wall Street, and so on. it's a boys club of assholes. So, yeah,
that's the way it is. Oh my God. All right.
So this initial team assigned to Bluebird hoped to find more expertise in biochemistry. Like they were kind of graduating from this idea of a truth serum into the mind control idea. And for this, they, despite the Ivy League blood, they're like, we have to go outside the institute and find somebody with expertise in the stuff that we want to do. And if you'll recall, the dean of the university that Gottlieb had attended, Ira Baldwin, had worked on a bunch of secret projects for military intelligence during World War II, developing bioweaponry. Mm-hmm. He had also managed to hook up the Special Operations Division at Camp Dietrich with one of his other previous students, Frank Olson. Now, there's gonna be a long bit of stuff between this, but I take the name Frank Olson, put it in your pocket. Do not forget Frank Olson.
Okay.
Very important to this story. So, Ira Baldwin is how the CIA would find Sidney Gottlieb. Baldwin had sort of continued at this like cushy desk job where he was like in an advisory position for the Chemical Corps. Like he would tell them, like he would give them advice on stuff. But he's no longer on the front lines of this operation. And when it was coming out that these people were looking for somebody with a particular set of skills, mm-hmm. And sort of a certain temperament towards patriotism, Baldwin remembered Gottlieb and how Gottlieb regretted not being able to serve his country due to his club foot and all that. And he remembered how Gottlieb was a brilliant budding chemist. Now, Gottlieb had also been established like for a decade as a very highly intelligent, well-respected chemist who worked in, pharmaceuticals. We established all that in the first episode. So mm-hmm. Gottlieb would be chosen by Dulles. And there's another weird little coincidental fact about that. Dulles would decide on Gottlieb, and apparently Dulles had also been born with a club foot.
A real Martha situation. Okay.
Yeah. So there is between this aristocratic intelligence officer and this weird proto-hippie Jewish man from the Bronx, this like ocean of culture and lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. But they got that one thing in common, though.
It's suggested in the book that their dual connections would be, quote, a strong but never mentioned bond between them.
Wow. All right.
Weird. It's weird. So Gottlieb would undergo psychological screenings, lots of training, and then he was assigned as chief of the chemical division of technical services staff, which, if you'll remember, technical services is the department that the MK projects are named after. So like there's also MK Naomi going on at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
So they have multiple projects. And with Gottlieb under the wing of the CIA, Bluebird received a new code name, which was Project Artichoke. And Artichoke, it absorbed these previous projects, including this stable of quote unquote rough boys that they employed and their mind control torturing techniques. So the interrogation tactics and experiments Gottlieb now oversaw became referred to internally as quote unquote artichoke work. And which, is something that I like to do with my salad occasionally. But
why? Like, I get that a lot of these names, sometimes they're kind of, they're like a kind of a nod to whatever the project's about or anything. But sometimes it just seems kind of random.
Well,
and what's the artichoke about? Do you know?
Artichoke is supposedly, I think, Gottlieb's favorite vegetable, supposedly, but that almost seems like too ridiculous. And there was some stuff that suggested, but cannot, no way to confirm, that artichoke was the name of like a notorious crime boss at the time, and it was named after that guy.
Okay.
Nothing really to go on there, but like there was some evidence, I guess, to suggest that maybe that's what they were naming it after. I say artichoke being his favorite vegetable is like a silly thing to name it, but like apparently MK Ultra was named MK Ultra because it was ultra top secret, which is silly. So
there are a lot of things like that the code names aren't like this. This is one of the things that I think about a lot with the like Hoagland stuff, where he deals so much in fucking ritual significance, and then you hear stuff like this where it's like, oh, the code name came because it was a vegetable this guy liked or whatever, and it's like these people are not trying to like create little puzzles that like hide in Easter eggs about themselves. Like it's just they're just names. Like,
it's just a weird aside to me. Like I don't know what it's like. Artichoke, it could be anything, right? But like it is like silly to me to be like, well, this is ultra top secret, so we are going to call it MK Ultra. It doesn't like reveal what the project, like you can't read into it, but like all at the same time, it's like, well, if you want it to be ultra top secret, why wouldn't you give it something that like doesn't point to it being ultra top secret? You know what I mean? It's just like weird decisions.
In that way, artichoke makes a lot of sense because it A, gives nothing away about what they're doing in the project, and B, doesn't give you any inclination to how important that project is. So I guess like in general, a code name that has no relation to anything makes some sense from like a what do they call it, like spycraft standpoint, you know?
Yeah, and then you read about something where it's like Operation Sea Spray, where they sprayed bacteria on a California town. I'm not going to remember the details, just to see what would happen and accidentally kill like 2 people. And you're like, brother, it does what it says on the tin. You were like, what the fuck?
What were you expecting? Yeah.
So it's super weird. If you want to continue getting into how fucked up the CIA is, I think something I would like to emphasize is just how much the CIA would huff their own fucking ass. It's like, okay, first of all, they're all in on polygraph tests. That is like acceptable data to them, which I'm pretty sure at this point, it's like pretty, like it's even still then like not, it's not considered legitimate in a lot of courts and things like that. Like it's questionable stuff even then, as I understood it. One of the lead artichoke boys, Morse Allen, was bought in on the idea of hypnotism after meeting a stage hypnotist who convinced him that one could hypnotize unwilling women into sex.
Damn it.
So like they like also start researching hypnotism because they hear these things and they're shown performances and things. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like I'm being unfair to be like, you fucking idiots in the 1950s didn't know hypnotism and like polygraph tests weren't good data.
Yeah.
But like, that's the kind of shit. I mean, basically the idea here is that do anything, doesn't matter what it is, do anything is like the actual sort of vibe.
Like it's like a fucking shotgun blast approach to trying to, because they're just like trying any alternative method to get information they wouldn't otherwise have. And a lot of those things are, in retrospect, kind of dumb and or incredibly shitty to do to people.
Yeah.
But they didn't care at the time.
Yeah. My favorite little side thing about them huffing their own farts is something that I can really only describe as an Ouroboros of social engineering. So Richard Helms would later be quoted as saying, there was deep concern over the issue of brainwashing. We felt that it was our responsibility not to lag behind the Russians or the Chinese in this field. And the only way to find out what the risks were was to test things such as LSD and other drugs that could be used to control human behavior. So brainwashing becomes a big thing with the CIA. They're afraid of it. They're scared that, American like prisoners of war and stuff could be converted to communism or whatever. However, the term and idea of brainwashing was an intelligence construct. It wasn't real.
Really?
Really. The term had been invented by a former intelligence officer and quote-unquote propaganda specialist from the OSS named Edward Hunter. And in an article he wrote, Communist Red China was accused of having a secret program to control minds with a method that was called brainwashing, which he took from some Chinese that he said translated to wash brain. This wasn't the case, however. Hunter's job here was to find a good way to hand wave away the public's perception of the growing anti-American sentiment abroad. So, like, anytime you would hear about an American who would defect, or like there were these things where like Americans would be released from prison in like China, and a good number of them would stay behind and live in China and not come back to the United States. And they would get accused of being brainwashed. They would get accused of being like homosexual. They would get accused of being in love with Asian women. But brainwashing was like the big catch-all term for like, you know, this is why this is happening. It's not because people hate the Americans and some of the fucked up shit we're doing.
Yeah.
It's like, they're being brainwashed. They're wiped clean and turned into a new person.
Why would anyone ever choose to not live in America?
Why would anti-American sentiment be growing in this time? Who knows? And so with brainwashing basically being made up, the CIA would then later just ingest their own propaganda. No joke. They would just basically run with the idea of brainwashing as a legitimate thing and an actual threat that was bearing down on them from, you know, various communist sources across the world. This, I think, can sort of explain the fervor they brought to Artichoke and the willingness to believe their own story about mind control drugs. As soon as the idea was spoken aloud, it would eventually become a concrete reality. Like, the way a lot of this reads is that the necessity of a drug torture mind control program was just spoken into existence.
They made a literal self-fulfilling prophecy. Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
That's how a lot of it feels, yes. And so a fresh-faced Gottlieb did take to this program with an intellectual appetite. By all accounts, he was a very curious guy. He read over reports of the various drugs being tested on subjects, and one in particular caught his eye, and that was LSD. Gottlieb's curiosity wasn't sated by merely studying the reports. He wanted to try the damn stuff. So he's 6 months into his job with the CIA, and he did just that.
Okay.
And here's how he describes his first experience. Quote, I happen to experience an out-of-bodiness, a feeling as though I am in a kind of transparent sausage skin that covers my whole body. And it is shimmering, and I have a sense of well-being and euphoria for most of the next 2 hours, and then it gradually subsides. Yeah, Sidney, that's about what it's like. Although I don't know about the sausage skin thing.
Yeah, is that normal, or is that
I mean, I think he's trying to.
I've never done LSD.
I think he's trying to describe like an out of body feeling of like there's a. I don't know. I don't know exactly. The thing is, like, it's hard to describe the feelings that you have when you're on these these like drugs that do stuff like that. But he would end up doing. I don't have the exact number in front of you, but like over the course of his career at the CIA doing this stuff, he would go over, I want to say, 250 LSD trips.
I mean, you got to go for statistical rigor if you want to. Like, he's just practicing the good scientific method, you know?
Exactly. So this willingness to partake in their own supply of torture instruments, because that's what these things were for them.
Yeah, it is funny that this guy's like, I'm going to use the thing we're going to use for torture and information extraction. I'm just going to take it recreationally a bunch of times.
Right. Well, it led to an extremely bizarre time at the CIA, according to many accounts from this time. Self-administering LSD and tripping on the job was basically encouraged. And agents kind of believed that having firsthand knowledge would be valuable for their quest to mind control. But they would like branch out to beyond just like giving themselves LSD. They would do fucked up shit like dosing new trainees to the organization who had no knowledge that it was about to happen. They would like spike like like fucking punch bowls at like social gatherings at the CIA and things like that. There was like even like a thing where like the thing was like, don't drink the punch at the CIA, social do, because you might get drugged. It's crazy. Yeah. They're just fucking throwing
it
around.
High school prom.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Gottlieb would end up traveling around the world for his LSD experiments. I kind of talked about this in the last episode, but there were these CIA quote unquote safe houses that were all over the world, but most notably in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. I sort of imagine there are others, but that we might not know about, because without spoiling too much, one of the big reasons MK Ultra is like such a fixation for the conspiracy community writ large is that the MK Ultra documents, that like the original documents were destroyed. So much is redacted, and then an enormous amount of what actually occurred was destroyed.
Interesting. Okay.
So like a lot of like we had to piece together from a lot of different account. I get the impression that research into this is like people piecing together accounts from a lot of people. That would sometimes be people whose families were victims of MK Ultra. It would be, there were documents that were eventually found, but like heavily redacted, and just a lot of like connecting threads and things that suggest things. So it's a complex thing, but like we don't know the extent of MK Ultra. Really, not really, because so much evidence of the specific experiments was destroyed. So yeah, he would travel. It does suck. Like, it's fucked up.
You want there to come a day where extensive records get released, and everyone is like, oh, here's like unrefutable proof of all the bullshit that was done. But it sounds like that day may never come.
Well, and the other fucked up angle of that is like people would try and fight the CIA, and the victims would try and fight in court, but the power and control that the CIA would exert over these courts and like the ability to basically draw cases out to the point of like being impossible. Like people would die as these cases would get like basically prolonged at like almost infinitely. Like beyond just destroying the evidence on the way out of the program, it's like the CIA would fight revealing evidence. Like they would fight to make sure that as little was coming out as possible. Gottlieb would fly to these safe houses and observe these so-called special interrogation sessions. So here's a snippet from the book. In 1951, a team of CIA scientists led by Dr. Gottlieb flew to Tokyo. 4 Japanese suspected of working for the Russians were secretly brought to a location where the CIA doctors injected them with a variety of depressants and stimulants. Under relentless questioning, they confessed to working for the Russians. They were taken out into Tokyo Bay, shot, and dumped overboard. The CIA team flew to Seoul in South Korea and repeated the experiment on 25 North Korean prisoners of war. They were asked to denounce communism. They refused and were executed. In 1952, Dulles brought Dr. Gottlieb and his team to post-war Munich in southern Germany. They set up a base in a safe house. Throughout the winter of 1952 to 1953, scores of expendables were brought to the safe house. They were given massive amounts of drugs, some of which Frank Olson had prepared back at Dietrich, to see if their minds could be altered. Others were given electroconvulsive shocks. Each experiment failed. The expendables were killed and their bodies burned.
It's fucked up that Sylvester Stallone was like, let's make that into a movie. You know?
Yeah. So part of what motivated the wantonly abusive nature of these particular torture sessions was that there were these like internal memos about how disposal of bodies of expendables was quote unquote no problem. They felt it gives off this vibe that they believe they could just destroy all the evidence, get away with murder, no consequence. And it's kind of revealing that it was just like so brazen, because at one point, the book describes how there is this English translator, this woman who's brought to a nearby military camp in Germany for work, and she comes across what seems to have been the result of a Project Artichoke session. And it says that she wrote in a letter back to her family home this, quote, "Arrived back in Frankfurt from Paris Sunday morning in time to spend all day at the Oberursel swimming pool acquiring a nice tan. They dragged a dead man out of the pool at 10 a.m.
Oh.
So this woman who has nothing to do with the project, she's just a translator visiting, just sees them pulling out a Project Artichoke victim, an MK Ultra victim,
from
out of a pool. Yeah. So
they were straight up like not hiding this shit at all.
Not really.
I mean, they are, but like
they are, but they aren't. Like like I said, it's very brazen. They do like. The more I learn about people who have been like almost like either definitely or almost definitely killed by the CIA, the more it's like they just fucking they'll do it in the open if they have to, and then they will whisk away any evidence that could lead back to the killer, who was probably a CIA person or somebody connected to the CIA.
Asset, at least,
an asset. So in April of 1953, Gottlieb worked with Helms to write up a memo proposing the expansion of their mind control research project. In the partially redacted memo, Helms suggested the project be expanded to include experiments that were of, quote, such an ultra-sensitive nature that they cannot and should not be handled by means of contracts which would associate CIA or the government with the work in question. And here's what it says in the memo. The stated aims: to develop a capability in the covert use of biological and chemical materials. This area includes the production of various physiological conditions which could support present or future clandestine operations. Aside from the offensive potential, the development of a comprehensive capability in this field of covert chemical and biological warfare gives us a thorough knowledge of the enemy's theoretical potential, thus enabling us to defend ourselves against a foe who might not be as restrained in the use of these techniques as we are. For example, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
The fucking gall.
It's
for
crazy.
The CIA to be like, we're gonna go so fucking hard on all of these abuses and torture methods and everything so that we can figure out what the limit of these things is. So when we come up against someone who's less restrained than us and is more savage than us and not as civilized, we will be able to know their capabilities.
Yeah,
like, it's
nuts.
Fucking, the killer is in the house with you, my dog. Like, God damn.
It's like it's really truly unhinged. I mean, the idea, I want people to hear, who are listening to this, to think about everything I just mentioned and everything I'm going to mention from here forward as these people are picturing these things as the restrained version of these operations. The memo goes on to say, for example, we intend to investigate the development of a chemical material which causes a reversible, non-toxic, aberrant mental state, the specific nature of which can be reasonably well predicted for each individual. This material could potentially aid in discrediting individuals, eliciting information, implanting suggestion, and other forms of mental control. And then the rest is redacted. So on April 13th, 1953, this expansion was officially approved and given a new budget and code name, MK Ultra. Now, not too long after, under the direction of Gottlieb and the approval of Dulles, the CIA threw $240,000 at Sandoz, the Swiss pharmaceutical company that employed Albert Hofmann, the chemist who accidentally discovered LSD and was researching it for its possible therapeutic components. Mm-hmm. With the $240K, the CIA bought the world's supply of LSD.
Jesus.
The world's supply. Also,
it's kind of a bargain, honestly.
I mean, we didn't know what was going on at this point. Also, get this, Niall, you're going to like this. They paid scientists at Eli Lilly in Indianapolis to break chemical code and assist in the manufacturing of LSD stateside. Once they basically realized that, like, Sandoz just didn't want to deal with LSD, they like for whatever reason saw it as like a burden that they didn't know anything to do with, and so the CIA is like, all right, it's ours now, and we're just going to force these scientists to manufacture it for us. Or not force, but rather like coerce. I'm sure they got paid like a shitload. So to break chemical code. So
and by chemical code, it's basically like the fact that this other place created the substance and probably held some sort of property over it. And
maybe, or I don't know if it's like an ethics thing. I don't actually know, but it could be any. Honestly, probably all of the above at the end of the day.
Yeah, basically, they bribed a bunch of scientists to replicate drugs for torture.
Yeah,
that's the gist.
Once again, I have to skip over some of the finer details, but under Gottlieb's direction, another so-called safe house, this is now MK Ultra, right? So another safe house is set up in dual apartments in New York. That might start sounding familiar to you because he began to work with a character who, like, God, we can't spend too much time on him because it's a lot. But this guy, a bizarre, thuggish narcotics detective named George White, who had connections to like the crime underworld and drug dealing. He basically was one of the guys who was like hunting down jazz musicians and entrapping them and like throwing them to jail for drug possession.
Okay.
Just great horrible guy. Like the book goes into his personal life and it's very bizarre. He was like a sexual sadist and stuff. Like he's really fucked up. But I guess the MK Ultra people kind of felt they needed somebody like this who had these connections to start like working on domestic programs. So,
they need a guy that can really get off on it. You know, they need to.
Okay, seriously, just you're 100% accurate. So, with the expansion of scope that came with MK Ultra, the New York safe house would become a domestic drug torture laboratory with a one-way mirror. Unsuspecting New Yorkers would be brought there to be given doses of LSD and then observed. They were lured there typically by sex workers.
Yeah.
White was the man chosen to direct this operation, and a lot of the targets would be down and outs, folks with addictions, fringes of society, sex workers. This was Midnight Climax.
Yeah, there it is.
Which again, it's like I cannot fucking believe you named your secret project that.
Yeah, well, like you just did Artichoke and avoided anything too like incriminating. You kind of fucked up with MK Ultra, but I'll give you that one because Ultra by itself, whatever. But Operation Midnight Climax, if you told that to someone who had never heard of this thing before, they're
like, "What porno is
a secret
that?"
program to drug people and to drug prostitutes, and they would not be that far off.
Yeah. Their whole and all their targets are like an agent would later comment on who they were targeting, and like I said, it's all these people who the agent was quoted as saying people who could not fight back.
Yeah.
Just easy victims. And this
at
white
least they're
guy
not calling them fucking expendables because they're Americans.
Oh no, they are expendables typically. I mean, I guess the expendables. Sorry, I get what you're saying. Outside of the country, if we're killing a commie, it's fine because they're expendables. But like, here's the thing: McCarthyism is in full swing. Like the Red Scare is fucking throttling the United States, and communists, perceived communist threats internally are also kind of expendables. But like, then you have these people who are just like unwitting test subjects. Really, that's all they are. Like just people and people who they expected to just like go under the radar at all times, even after they were like abused. So, this white guy who ran the operation was fucking deranged. And he, from the book, I have this little section here. Much later on, towards the end of White's life, he would write a letter to Gottlieb in 1975 that was basically thanking him for the opportunities that he was afforded while working with the CIA. And here's a snippet of that letter. Quote,
Jesus. Okay.
I was a very minor missionary, actually a heretic, but I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards because it was fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? Pretty good stuff, brother.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
How do you get that letter from someone you employed and not immediately just like become the biggest whistleblower in American history?
I don't want to skip to the end of Gottlieb's story, but there's some shit at the end that's weird. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but he does seem to have maybe been plagued by his work here at the end of his life. So a lot of these, a lot of these experiments and their subjects were also found by setting up front organizations at hospitals, universities, pharmaceutical companies, prisons, things like that. The CIA began to subsidize many institutions under the guise of research, but secretly they would like funnel drugs through them, usually through people that were like on their payroll or things like that, to then have it be administered to unwitting test subjects at these institutions. Oftentimes, a lot of institution personnel, they would have no idea where this money was actually coming from. I don't quite understand how that works, but apparently they're just getting handed large sums of money to just like, turn a blind eye to like giving a patient a bunch of LSD.
Jesus.
Prison doctors would be coerced into collaboration with Gottlieb's designs, dosing prisoners in their cells and writing up reports to hand back to Gottlieb and his people. One such prison contact was Harris Isbell, director of research at the Addiction Research Center in Lexington, Kentucky. And while it was nominally a rehab center for addicts, it was said to have, quote, functioned more like a prison. So here from the book, quote, the CIA needed a place to test dangerous and possibly addictive drugs. Isbell had a large number of drug users in no position to complain. From the early 1950s onward, the agency shipped LSD with any number of other potentially dangerous narcotics to Kentucky to be tested on human guinea pigs. Another example of MKUltra recruits outside of the CIA was Ewan Cameron, former president of the American Psychiatric Association, and honestly, by what I was reading before all this shit came out, widely reputable psychiatrist, which is weird because in the mid-50s, he was paid $766,000. Am I reading that right? Yeah, sorry. My brain just fogged up for a second. $766,000 in today money over the course of 7 years to basically abuse patients. Notably, Cameron was also known for the development of a technique called psychic driving, which you may have heard about. Which is where a patient is subjected to a looping tape of certain phrases as a means to reorient their behavior.
Okay.
And this questionable technique was what had initially caught the attention of the CIA. They're like, yeah, that's fucking weird, dude. We want you to take this money and start giving people drugs that may fuck them up. Like, he would like put people in comas that would like just be subjected to drug experiments over the course of weeks and maybe months, I think it was. But he would just do that and they would pay him. I read the whole psychic driving thing because I'd heard of it before. And the only thing that I can think of is Dexter's Laboratory and Omelette du Fromage, where Dexter accidentally psychically drives himself to he tries to learn French overnight, and the tape starts looping and it starts repeating Omelette du Fromage. Only thing he can say the next day, and it's hilarious. It's very
good joke. It's one of those jokes that really stuck with me from Dexter's Lab as a child.
Same.
So he really did, like, some people would say he brainwashed himself in that, but like psychic driving would be the technical term. Okay.
Which like I didn't look too deep into it, but like I don't think psychic driving is considered a legitimate practice.
No.
Like it I don't think it works really.
None of this shit is. Like, I mean, LSD maybe, but not the way they're using it.
No.
Like, here's the thing. LSD was originally trying to be a therapy thing, and now, like, however many fucking years later, we're finally maybe looking into using it as part of psychotherapy for PTSD patients.
Yeah.
And it took this long to do it because the CIA tried to torture people with it in the time period. Like, it's
not great. I'll say it. It makes us, America, look pretty bad. I'll say.
Yeah. Pretty bad.
So under Gottlieb's direction, subjects were used to stress test LSD. How large of a dose could a person take before it broke their mind, before it killed them? Now, like, I'm not joking.
No, I know. It's
I'm not joking at all. Now, they had gotten a lot of the data on how much people could take drug-wise before it killed them. That was pretty. They got a lot of good data from the Nazis when they worked with them. But they wanted to know, like, how much LSD did it take, or was it like how many consecutive days could a subject undergo an LSD trip? One mental patient in Kentucky underwent 174 straight days of being dosed with LSD.
Holy shit.
They wanted to see, like, how do we break the human mind? The way Kinzer, the author of the book, puts it, the book that I'm sourcing all this from, he describes it is that Gottlieb theorized that mind control by way of drugs would be a two-part process. And this two-part process is like, it's funny. Let me just describe it to you. He believed that first thing you had to do to create a mind-controlled subject is destroy that person's mind.
Yeah.
And then, once their mind is obliterated, insert a new mind into the void that was left behind.
Yeah. That's basically what people think celebrity pop stars are mind controlled
that's
now. Like,
what
I think they got broken down and replaced with a new thing. Yeah.
Except, they've got the term alter, which I'm not sure where that's picked up from, but it's entirely possible it's somewhere in this realm of like CIA spooky shit. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because it's like, this is the thing. Like, I have a book on my shelf called How to Create a Perfect Mind-Controlled Slave, which is, I'm not
That's a conversation starter.
It really is, but it's like, I found it in the sort of like conspiracy. They don't call it conspiracy, but it is like the conspiracy section of the used bookstore. And in it, like, they're describing things that, like, people like specifically, what Sidney Gottlieb started. They're like describing, like, this is how they do it. Now, the thing is, and we're going to get to this, but Gottlieb got very good at the first part of his two-step process.
Oh, yeah. It's the way easier part.
But much later on, he would pretty much conclude that you could not just, like, control somebody's mind with these drugs. It just doesn't work. You could destroy somebody's mind and their life with it, but you couldn't, like, make them into an assassin or turn them into, a perfect spy or whatever the fuck. You couldn't do that. You could not do it.
Yeah, you couldn't make Chuck. Fucking, yeah. Okay.
Oh my God.
All right.
Chuck.
So they figured that one out before the early 2000s when it was TV.
Now, I want to finish this episode with a quick story. Okay.
Okay.
You'll remember the name Frank Olson from earlier. He's a chemist.
I was told not to forget.
Yeah, don't forget Frank Olson. He was a chemist who had been hired to work at Camp Dietrich at the recommendation of Ira Baldwin. They would use stuff that he developed at Dietrich. Now, on November 28th, 1953, around 2 a.m., Olson plummeted out of the 10th story window of a Manhattan hotel.
Okay.
The night manager ran to Olson as the ambulance arrived, later claiming that he, quote, raised his head slightly, his lips moving. His eyes were wide with desperation. He wanted to tell me something. I leaned down closer to listen, but he took a deep breath and died. Police arrived at the scene and entered the room Olson had fallen from, and there they found a man named Robert Lashbrook, who had been registered to that room that night with Olson. Lashbrook claimed he, quote, heard a noise and then woke up. He claimed not to have seen Olson go out the window, and when the officers asked him why he didn't do anything, Lashbrook said, quote, I looked out the window. I saw him lying there. There were people running from the station. What could I have done? I could see that he had help. I thought it best to wait here. The night manager I guess the night manager who also, like, went to to Olson as he died, overheard this conversation with the police and was immediately suspicious. And he would later remark, quote, "In all my years in the hotel business, I never encountered a case where someone got up in the middle of the night, ran across a dark room in his underwear, avoiding two beds, and dove through a closed window with the shade and curtains drawn." The night manager then consulted with the telephone operator to see if any phone calls had been made to Olson and Lashbrook's room recently. It turns out there had, in fact, and apparently at the time, operators were known to listen in on calls.
Yeah.
Which is wild because this operator listened in on the call and heard what was said.
Interesting.
A Long Island number belonging to somebody named Dr. Harold Abramson had been called from the room, and the operator overheard their exchange, and the caller was saying, "Well, he's gone." And Dr. Abramson responded, "Well, that's too bad." And
so it was the roommate that called the doctor to tell him the guy had killed himself.
And Dr. Abramson, we would later find out, was a CIA-paid doctor. Decades after Olson's death, details began to emerge that called the entire scenario into question. Around Thanksgiving time in 1953, Olson was invited to a retreat put together by Gottlieb for the inner circle of folks working on MK Ultra and adjacent projects. One night after everyone had drunk and eaten their fill, Gottlieb announced that all of their drinks had been spiked with LSD.
Jesus.
This upset Frank Olson deeply, and when he returned to his home, he was not himself. His appetite disappeared along with his focus, and when his wife pressed him, he ominously said, quote, "I've made a terrible mistake." Shortly thereafter, Olson announced his intentions to quit the CIA, and he openly expressed doubt and fear about his work with the CIA to his boss at Camp Dietrich, a man named Vincent Ruitt. He wanted out and didn't seem to be afraid to say that he wanted out, but the problem was that he knew secrets. So here's just a snippet from the book. Olson had spent 10 years at Camp Dietrich and knew most, if not all, of the Special Operation Division's secrets. He had repeatedly visited Germany. Slides and home movies he took during those trips placed him at the building that housed the CIA station in Frankfurt, and that was less than an hour's drive from the secret prison at Villa Schuster. Olson also brought home pictures from Heidelberg and Berlin, where the U.S. military maintained clandestine interrogation centers. Besides Germany, his passport shows visits to Britain, Norway, Sweden, and Morocco. He was one of several Special Operations Division scientists who were in France on August 16th, 1951, when an entire French village, Pont-Saint-Esprit, was mysteriously seized by mass hysteria and violent delirium that afflicted more than 200 residents and caused 7 deaths. The cause was later determined to have been poisoning by ergot, the fungus from which LSD was derived. Perhaps most threatening of all, if American forces did indeed use biological weapons during the Korean War, there is circumstantial evidence but no proof. Olson would have known. The prospect that he might reveal any of what he had seen or done was terrifying.
Yeah, okay. So they dosed like a whole fucking town, and this guy knew about it and everything. Okay.
And he wanted out.
Yeah.
And to this day, people think the CIA gave him his out when they threw him out the window.
I don't know for sure. I don't want to meet the same fate, so I'm not going to say specifically how I feel about this, but it's a theory. There's some merit to the theory, I'll say.
There's more to it, but we're going to have to conclude the story of Sidney Gottlieb and MK Ultra in part 3.
Part 3.
Where we're going to learn about how the program was exposed, how it affected United States culture, and how Gottlieb would continue CIA work, this time under the title Poisoner-in-Chief. So we haven't even talked
that fucking business card. Like, what the fuck?
This is a nickname, of course, but he would
Okay.
become known by certain people as the Poisoner-in-Chief for the work that is not MK Ultra related, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Which
so
is
moved on to
insane.
other projects.
So that's part 2. I really did try to fit it into 2 parts, but it wasn't working.
There's too many tangents. Like, it's hard to, and they're important. Like, it's.
I mean, the thing is, like, the tangents are like related in or at the very least, like, illustrate what's going on here. I mean, like, imagine like being told like, these guys were so afraid of brainwashing that they were torturing people domestically, and not having the context of like, hey, we like made up brainwashing as an intelligence operation, like propaganda thing. And then 3 years later,
it just sounds like they're trying to deal with some foreign threat. Like without the context, they sound way more competent.
Yeah.
But the more context you have, the more it sounds like this was all kind of thrown together and a bunch of people on power trips just torturing people.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. A big boys club of people, of powerful people who are so taken with the belief that I believe the phrase that gets used in the book that gets quoted from people who worked on the project is that they believe that they were going to, quote, unlock the secrets of the universe. There's a grand vision here, right? And that is what's like so tantalizing for these people is like they're on the precipice of like understanding everything. And that's what's driving them. Or at least some of them. So
other than that one guy that just wants to hurt people.
Well, yeah, that was, I mean, look, sometimes when you are a visionary who's taking shitloads of acid and torturing people, you really gotta, it's not like you're gonna sit there and like fucking put the electroshock clamps on them and force feed them. No, you're gonna get the fucking thug from New York to do it for you. You're gonna be like, hey, yeah, you can like watch these people fuck while they're tripping on LSD and see if that does anything.
Yeah.
So look, yes, you're gonna go and see so many sessions of torture, but
we are gonna know how much LSD it takes to make someone completely ruin their life.
Yeah, it's
so that's important.
Yeah, it's wild shit. So in the interest of some levity here, I would like to return to Travis's email, which I'm just now realizing at the very end says, "Love the show. Loved hearing Niall and Jules cover encounters in the last 2 episodes, and hope Kyle feels better soon. Thank you. I do feel a lot better now." So,
glad you enjoyed the encounters episode.
The coverage was great. I listened to both the episodes while I was recovering. So.
Now you got to go back and listen to our They Live bonus episode now that you've watched the show.
Oh shit. Yeah. So here's Travis's big question, and they actually added their own answer to the big question. So here's what they say. I had an unrelated big question inspired by thinking about the 2 main types of urban fantasy, the quote-unquote hidden world variety like Buffy or the Dresden Files, and the supernatural completely out in the open variety where vampires and werewolves and stuff are just common knowledge. And I was curious to hear, assuming the material you guys cover was actually true, if you'd prefer to live in a world where UFOs and cryptids and ghosts are a secret, like conspiracy theorists maintain is the case in real life, or a world where it's all commonplace and everybody just knows about it. If we're allowed to answer the questions ourselves, I think I'd prefer the one where they're a secret and can be discovered. It just seems more exciting. I think this is also part of the appeal of conspiracy theories in general, really. The idea that there's this hidden thing that you can discover has a sort of romance to it that I can't imagine being very easy for people to latch onto, especially if they don't have much else in their lives.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Because I think I know my answer as well, but like my answer kind of comes with an asterisk.
Yeah, of course. I think I know what I would want. I like the idea of the open world kind of aspect of these things.
Okay.
Like I think
like
that,
everything's out in the open.
Yeah, like I think that it would be interesting. Like maybe it's just part of it in that I would be very curious to see. You hear so much hype about what if aliens are real and what it will do to like the Christian mind,
Yeah.
And you just like, it would be so, I feel like getting hit with such a large dose of there's more to this world than you understand could be healthy for a lot of people in terms of ego death method. So I think it would be interesting for my own kind of, interests. I would lean to the out in the open world.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay. I respect that. I The thing is, I can make a case in my own mind for both. For me personally, I think I lean more towards Travis's because the discovery and the secrecy is very alluring and romantic, and I'm with that. I mean, so like but I also like what you're saying as well. But the truth of the matter is if I could somehow, like, here's the thing: if I could dedicate my life to like researching this stuff, and the thing is, like, the world where there's secret is sort of like the world we live in now, really. Even though, like, I personally don't believe that much of that is out there. Yeah, it's still kind of the same world, huh? But
yeah, but like,
I guess what they're saying is that, like, you are at least somewhat privy to the existence of these things in this, like, sort of like fun TV show style world. Like,
yeah, though, if you really like, you would get the episode of the humans that have a web forum where they're sharing every little secret they can find about these mystical creatures that live in their world, and there's this like group of people that are hunting it down, and they would eventually they would start interacting with some of that world, and it's much different than they assumed. Like, that would be good TV for sure. But I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think like both would be weird.
Yeah.
And one is kind of just before the other in some ways.
That's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, I guess, can I do both? Because, like, if I could, like, dedicate my life to being a wannabe, like, Fox Mulder type, then, like, I mean, I guess I don't want to work for the FBI, but, like, if I could, like, dedicate my life to, like, researching the fringes of reality and stuff, I mean, that's like the shit that I'm all about.
So what if, in this situation, I know this is going beyond the question, we don't normally do this, whatever the fuck, but if we're looking at this as one after the other, if we're looking at this as it's secret and then the secret comes out and there's a disclosure event, do you want to be on the inside before the reveal?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you want to be able to, like, know, you want to be able to watch the world react to
I want to
this
be
disclosure.
This is more psychologically revealing than I want it to be, but I want to be the person who has known the truth, like Fox Mulder, and is vindicated after the truth comes out.
You want to get the gotcha moment,
sort of, yeah. Like
gets what you.
Yeah, I'm like, UFOs are fucking visiting us. I fucking told you. I knew it was there. I've been spending so much time with it. I know it's there. Like, and to just, like, I don't even necessarily mean, like, I get to do an I told you so, but it's like I finally get to, I'm pointing at the UFO on the horizon, and finally other people are turning around and pointing at it too, and I'm like, fucking finally, we're all on the same page. And I agree with you. I think a world where people are like, there's something beyond just our world, that's just becomes common knowledge. I guess it lends perspective to, or it could lend perspective.
Or at least I would hope.
I would hope. Yeah, we're
have people
very
trying
optimistic.
To fucking enslave everyone, and it's like
they start
fucking
MK Ultraing the werewolves and vampires and shit. They're just like feeding, Bigfoot.
All of a sudden, we find out that Trump has known all along about these things, and all the references in his campaign ad stuff to like werewolves has been real.
Yeah,
like that would be fucking wild.
MK Ultra 2 involves just like testing. They like realize that Bigfoot's like resilience against LSD is much, much higher than a normal human, and so they're like, maybe we can turn him into an LSD super soldier.
Yeah, and we also find out that Bad Dragon has been just like a secret company made by like monsters to like profit off of human
just true.
Interest.
That's just real.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Hey, Travis, great big question. I felt like it was appropriate to talk about something more fun after all the torture and mayhem. So yeah. Anyways, are you ready to jump on over to some business?
All right, yeah. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're probably there.
Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. I'm finally fucking back. Go check out our Twitch stream where we're hanging out playing video games. Hoping to get a co-op of Shadow of the Erd Tree going with our good buddy Colin sometime soon. So go check us out there. Give us a follow. If you want to email us and maybe have it read out on the show, go ahead and hit us up. It Gets Weird Podcast at gmail.com. let us know how we should address you, and tell us a cool story or ask us a cool question. Let us know your thoughts on recent episodes. Even I don't think we've ever gotten like feedback necessarily. Just people are like, "Hey, I love the show." Well, no, we kind of have.
We have.
Yeah, I guess we have.
Not
Never
like
mind.
not a lot. But
I'm making shit up. So please hit us up at the email. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/itgetsweird. This is, this is the only way we make money off of this show. We don't advertise or any of that bullshit. It's all word of mouth for us and people who are just, choosing to support us. And there's a lot of you, and we sincerely appreciate it. But we could always use more. Support. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $1 tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. The $1 tier is a tip. You're just giving us a buck and saying, hey, thanks for doing what you do. Love the show. At the $2 tier, you get It Gets Weird TV, where right now Niall and I are like at the tail end of the X-Files of season 2. And we discuss weird television there, and you get to vote on what TV we watch next and discuss. So that's at the $2 tier. At the $5 tier, you get access to more bonus content. I believe as of this episode, our new pilot episode of a new show is up. So you get a bunch of stuff. There's and I gotta say, huge back catalog, whether you're at the $2 tier or the $5 tier, although $5 tier is like the most bang for your buck. Tons and tons of episodes on there, hundreds, I think, at this point. So please check them out. Whether you donate to the $2 tier, the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out and you can talk to us directly. Lots of great chats happening in there. If you can't donate, that's what I say. I'm MK Ultraing myself with COVID brain fog. If you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out. I'll see you in part 3 next week.